Sorry for the delay. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Just start with the COVID numbers. As of yesterday, total cases in Massachusetts, 115,926. That's a one-day increase from the previous day of 289 cases. Statewide, 8,536 total deaths. That's up 7 from the previous day. Those numbers are combined both confirmed and probable cases in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Boston numbers, I don't have today's numbers, so these are as of yesterday. 13,995 cases, and 10,063 people have recovered, and we have 727 deaths in the city of Boston. We have 51 new cases reported over the weekend with 1 death, and that was a 3-day accumulation. So when people look at that 1-day increase, that was over 3 days. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the families that are still have members suffering with the coronavirus, and also the families who lost loved ones during this pandemic. Heat emergency, we started a new heat emergency on Sunday. It's in effect through today. As we all know, it's the second week in a row that we've had a heat emergency here in the city of Boston. We generally don't get them consecutively like that. We had 21 Boston Center Family Centers open for cooling, and last week we opened 2 outdoor pools, as I mentioned last week, the Clarity Pool in Charlestown and the Marabella Pool in the North End. We had great success in both of those pools with many people coming by. We reached a daily capacity of 225 swimmers on almost every single day since the opening. I want to thank the residents for following the guidelines. As we all know, those amount of swimmers is certainly 60% less actually than what we normally would have in a situation like that due to COVID-19. Space is still open for the BCYF programming, both in-person and remote. All of our programming this summer is free. We're asking families, if you want to register to go to a pool or get your young person into a program, go to boston.gov/BCYF-summer. That's boston.gov/BCYF-summer. We want to continue to repeat what we've been repeating for the last 5 months here in the importance of wearing face covering, keeping at least 6 feet of distance from other people, avoiding large crowds. We're asking people to avoid large in-person gatherings or parties, avoid being outside in the middle of the day during this heat wave. We're asking people to check on their elderly neighbors on particularly these hot days, but just to make sure your neighbors are okay. We're asking people to stay hydrated all day, drink plenty of water and fluids. We're asking people to keep an eye out watch for signs of exhaustion, and call 911 if you see anyone experiencing difficulties. We also, just to remind everyone, we canceled all parades and festivals throughout the summer this year due to COVID-19. It's very important that we don't have large gatherings in the city of Boston. It's something that we want to stay on top of. We've seen in the United States of America 4 consecutive days over 1,000 deaths of coronavirus. The virus is still very much a threat here, and it will be for some time here in Boston, and certainly as we're watching the news and seeing what's going on around the country, and still it amazes me that there's some still elected officials in the country that are still refusing to wear a face mask and talk about the importance of face masks. So as we think about here in the city of Boston, when we reopen, it doesn't mean that we're relaxing any of our precautions we have in place. We don't want to start seeing going backwards. And I also just ask people, as we think about the rest of the summer, when you think about birthday parties and cookouts and things like that, be very careful. You don't want to see as outbreaks of coronavirus on your backyards or in parks around the city of Boston. And that's another reason why we're not going to be having parades this summer and this fall here in the city of Boston. It's why the Boston Marathon was officially canceled, and it's why a lot of festivals have been canceled. So we're asking people to be very careful. We also need to stay very vigilant as college students make their way back to Boston next month. I'm certainly concerned about the thousands of young people coming to our city, especially from areas around the country that are experiencing recent surges in COVID-19 cases. We've been talking to, and my administration has been talking to the college universities on a regular basis throughout the reopening process. We're working closely with our institutions to understand the new protocols and precautions and create a plan that if someone were to test positive, we are helping them and helping the colleges plan safe housing options for students to reduce their density on campus. Early this month, we issued some guidelines permitting off-campus spaces like hotels for temporary student housing to allow colleges to get to where they need to get to. The Boston Planning and Development Agency, along with Inspectional Services and Licensing, are in the process of reviewing 4 applications currently right now. These applications are posted on the BPDA website for anyone to see, and approvals will be also posted as they're issued. Our plans are to approve by the BPDA and Inspectional Services, and we'll be looking at, after we perform inspections of these spaces, to make sure that they meet the safety standards. Each college university submitting a plan must engage nearby residents with notifications on what their plans are and talk about how a neighborhood can reach out to them if issues arise. We are also working with the state on contract tracing efforts in partnership with all of our colleges, along with testing. This will be our most powerful tool in ensuring that the transition rates remain low, not just here in the city, but throughout the college community. This week, I'm actually meeting with college presidents to further discuss their reopening plans. A lot of the colleges have been planning very different scenarios, just as we've been planning different scenarios for the Boston Public School system. And it's important that there should be if there's a significant increase in cases, that we get a chance to get on top of it and know it immediately. I'll be asking them on how they plan to adhere to the governor's quarantine order for students living on campus as well as off campus. We're also monitoring the situation carefully, and we're going to be ready to help college universities if needed as we move forward. Just a quick update on Boston Public Schools. Last week, Superintendent Casilius presented a draft reopening plan to the school committee. I want to stress it's a draft reopening plan. BPS is following public health guidelines for reopening schools that they're working on. The BPS has been gathering feedback from students and families and staff for months via survey, focus groups, and community meetings. We are looking at a hybrid model that would assign students to groups and bring students into schools on a rotating basis. That is what we're looking at today. But no matter what model's chosen, the Boston Public Schools have fully developed a plan for an all-remote instruction as well, if the cases either go up before September 10th or if they go up after we go back to school. And the superintendent and her team have been working extremely hard on looking at the different models of school. There's not one size fits all. All I know is that September 10th will be almost 6 months to the day where students have not been in a classroom. I know the parents have concerns. We all have concerns about what school looks like. So we're going through an exercise right now of looking at and putting in place all the safety measures. And as we get closer to school, based on the science and numbers, will determine what option we move forward with. This week is another week of action to increase Boston's response rate for the 2020 census. And today is a day of action in Boston. Boston's rate right now of response to the census is 53%. That's 12% lower than our response was in 2010. We're asking people to fill out the census online. Go to my2020census.gov or call by phone in 13 different languages. Census workers will be knocking on doors starting August 11th. If households have not responded. So if you fill out the census form, you'll not be getting a knock on your door. The Census Bureau Mobile Operations is visiting public spaces to help people fill out the census as well. They can also host online events. To learn more about that, please call 311, the city number, or visit Boston Count 2020 website at boston.gov. It is really important that we get these census forms filled out. As I said in the past, our federal funding, a lot of our funding that we get down here into the city of Boston, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, it's based off of our census data and census information. And over the last 3 decades, we've lost population, or at least we've underreported, I guess, in some cases, population. So having people fill out the census is a big help to all of us here, including yourself as taxpayers here in the city of Boston and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, making sure that you count, and you do count. So I'm asking people, please make sure we fill out the census as we move forward. Also, ballots applications were mailed out last week for the upcoming election. As of yesterday, 4,000 applications were received back in the mail. Massachusetts passed legislation that allows anyone who requests a mail-in ballot get one. How you apply is you fill out the application and send it back to the elections department to get a mail-in ballot. You can choose if you want a ballot for the primary election on September 1st, or if you want a general election ballot on November 7th, or both, quite honestly. Independent voters must choose a party ballot for their primary. Applications to request mail-in ballots must be received by August 26th for the state primary and October 28th for the general election. Early voting is also going to happen this year. Primaries are going to be August 22nd to 28th. General election is going to be October 17th to 30th. We'll have in-person voting for all elections, and adding the COVID pandemic on social distancing, sanitizing procedures, and proper use of PPE for training of all poll workers. We're asking you to learn, if you want to learn where the locations are in your neighborhood for early vote, go to boston.gov/elections to learn more. And also, it's very important that people get out and vote. And the ballots that everyone received, if you don't want to come in person this year, as I mentioned, the legislature allowed the opportunity for everyone to vote by mail. So it's very easy. You sign it, and you mail it back in, put a stamp on it, and you'll get ballots for all the elections this year. Upcoming events this week. We want to help businesses gain better understanding of the request for proposal documents and bidding process. This is where the City of Boston, on our procurement rules, in trying to get more activity and more involvement from businesses of color to access the funding that we have for private contracts here in the City of Boston. We're holding 2 workshops. One is today at 3:30, is a workshop on goods and professional services, and on August 5th, a workshop on how to bid on construction contracts. These are free and open to the public, but you need to register online. As you know, we're working to make the City of Boston contracting process more accessible and inclusive, and this is one of the ways to make it happen. We can answer any questions that you might have as a contractor or a private person to understand how the process works and how you can access the ability to bid on some of the goods and services for the City of Boston. Our Police Reform Task Force continues its listening session this week. I want to thank everyone who's testified or participated in last week's events on body-worn camera and implicit bias. Tomorrow, Wednesday, we have listening sessions on the Police Review Board. Thursday, sessions on use of force. And to learn more or sign up, you can go to boston.gov/ending racism. You can also submit written testimony through the website on any of our 4 issues covered in the sessions during August 7th. After that, the task force will be completing its first round of recommendations, which will open up for public review for 2 weeks. So I encourage everyone to share your experience and make your voices heard. Unfortunately, I need to respond to yet another cruel and backwards decision coming out of Washington, D.C. HUD said it's revoking a fair housing regulation aimed at increasing diversity in the suburbs. They are clearly grandstanding in an election year. Housing is a human right. I've said that more than one time. It's the only way to battle decades of racist housing policies like redlining did to undo them. While we're trying to have a conversation about economic justice, Washington is using dog whistle politics. In Boston, we will not waver on our commitment to fair housing. We are dedicated to helping residents access housing and have a fair shot at owning their own home. We hold banks, lenders, property owners, and landlords accountable, but also as partners in this work. We make sure residents know their rights. We are working with fair housing advocates on a plan to guide our work and how we're going to move forward with that work. We're also going to be filing a zoning amendment that we believe will make Boston the first American city with fair housing requirements written into our zoning code. I'd like to give a shout out to City Councilors Lydia Edwards and Kenzie Bach, who's been working on this amendment and moving it forward. We look forward to additional conversations with the council and the community about our work here with the zoning amendment. Our work is to keep families in their homes and has become even more critical during COVID-19. We are working to strengthen the protections for renters and homeowners and anyone and everyone who calls Boston their home. We've made millions of dollars available in renter relief. The Boston Housing Authority has paused all non-essential evictions. The Boston Housing Authority is also working with hundreds of BPS families to provide permanent rental vouchers to lift them out of homelessness and poverty. Our new city budget that was passed by the City Council several weeks ago for fiscal year 2021 includes $16 million of new investments in affordable housing, tenants protection, and helps to support our Office of Housing Stability. We've also filed several pieces of legislation in the current legislative session to keep people safe and in their homes and protect any tenant's rights. We're looking forward to, as the legislature moves forward here, moving those priorities forward and before the legislative session ends. These are all important steps for an equitable recovery. But right now, individual families need immediately financial relief. And that depends on actions of our federal government and the United States Senate. People are facing constant threats to their homes, their jobs, their health, their livelihoods. Every single day is a struggle. Those struggles hurt people of color disproportionately. This is an aspect of systemic racism gets even worse during the recession that we're heading into. The Federal CARES Act unemployment benefits are set to expire in just a few days. If new forms of relief don't arrive, many families and individuals are going to face some serious struggles here in Boston. So again, I'm calling on Congress to pass the bill to provide direct support before they adjourn for the summer, before they go to their summer homes, their summer beach homes. We're asking you to make sure that you take care of the most vulnerable Americans. The clock is ticking. There is no time to wait. The pandemic has not ended. It continues on. Americans need relief, and they need it right now. So I'm asking the United States Senate to take action on this legislation as we move forward. In closing, I just want to say thank you to everyone. This is a really important time. I had a meeting this morning, and we were talking about the uncertainty of this time and place in this moment. We started with a pandemic back in February, which led to a lot of protests and racial unrest and racism. And I thought today, I was talking to the City Hall folks that work with me every day, and I said to them that we have a responsibility to make sure we continue to work on behalf of the residents of Boston every single day. And no matter how bad or how tough it feels that it's getting right now, I'm asking everyone, we are Bostonians, we are strong. We will get through all of this together. We'll continue to move forward, and we will come out a stronger city on the other side. So to all the folks that are out there struggling today, just think about the way I try to deal with life. I try to take it a day at a time. Take it a day at a time. This too shall pass, and we will move forward stronger. So thank you. With that, I'll open up for questions to the press.
There's some of the nurses in the Boston schools. We're going to hold a rally here tomorrow because they have a lot of concerns about the role they've had in the reopening discussions. They don't think they're ready to reopen right now. What is your response to that? Do you feel like they have had a voice in this process?
The question is, there's going to be a rally scheduled tomorrow by the nurses in the Boston Public Schools here tomorrow to say that it's not time to reopen. Is that what you say? And they feel they haven't been part of the process. So let me respond to that. Brenda Casilius the other day at the school committee just presented a draft form. Now's the time to have conversations about what's going to go into the plan. We don't know if it's too early or too late right now, quite honestly. As I've said from the very beginning, I am, as mayor, listen, I was the person that shut down the St. Patrick's Day Parade before the spike exploded. We delayed the marathon. I'm going to take the safety of our kids. I'm going to take the safety of our nurses, the safety of our teachers, and that's going to be our #1 priority here in the city of Boston. Now is the time to have those conversations. And I appreciate the teachers for coming out tomorrow. I mean, the nurses for coming out tomorrow. And I think certainly we all should have concerns, and we all do have concerns. But I think as we move forward here in this process, at some point, we're going to have to reopen school. Whether that's September 10th, October 10th, November 10th, December 10th, whatever it is. And I think that right now is the time to have those conversations about what that looks like. I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't tell if September 10th is the right day yet. I hope it is. I hope our numbers are down. I hope our weekly rate is at 0, and I hope we get to that point. It's too early to say that right now, so now is the time to be sitting and having conversations. I'll come right back. Yeah, let me go ahead.
How do you see the colleges, the rollout happening? Will it be uniform among universities, or will there kind of be each school will have its own plans, like how hard, what to do if the students sick?
Yeah, the question is, how do I see the rollout of colleges opening up, such as quarantine, if students get sick? I'm going to add to that moving in weekend and things like that. Well, tomorrow we're going to have a meet. I think it's tomorrow. Tomorrow, the next day, I'm going to have a meeting with the colleges to talk about some of those plans. I mean, many of the communities, neighborhoods are concerned about move-in weekend. Historically, the move-in weekend has been one weekend where everyone kind of moves in, from the freshmen to the seniors. That is going to look very different this year. We won't be able to have move-in all in one day. I think colleges are looking at this very separately in some cases. I think the common theme, what I've heard from the colleges that are trying to come back to school this year, are going to be that they're going to do lots of testing. They're going to create a space for students that might test positive for the coronavirus. They're all going to have their own quarantine, what the rules and regulations are for quarantine. So they're going to be individualized plans, but they have similar themes throughout them. And I'll have more on that on Thursday.
Heard about anybody not coming back?
Well, I don't think, the question is, I haven't heard about anyone not coming back. I think that Harvard's coming back in a limited manner. MIT's coming back in a limited manner, I believe. I think Berkeley might not be coming back. I know that Urban College in Boston is going to do online only. I believe some of our other colleges are going to do online. We'll get a list to everyone, so you have what colleges are coming back, what not. So you'll have a good list. I don't want to say something I misspeak here. I'll have to be fixing it all day today. Say it one more time, sir. Yeah. Which one? Yeah, in the store. Yeah. I don't have. There was an incident in a store last week in Roxbury where a clerk was taken and shot. I don't have where he is in his recovery. I know that the police, it's under investigation. I think they'll be able to make some announcements in that case really soon. Yeah, the question is, they're getting the news getting tweets about a military vehicle parked in Jamaica Plain with no plates. To my knowledge, there's no what the city of Portland is experiencing and the city of Seattle is experiencing. We're not experiencing that here in Boston. And what I mean by that is folks that haven't, not sure what I'm talking about. Federal agents have shown up, not coordinating with the mayor of Portland, or not, from my understanding, coordinating with the mayor of Seattle or the police department, and they're just randomly showing up on the streets and taking not part in protests, but addressing protests. I was on a call yesterday with the mayor of Seattle, the mayor of Portland, the mayor of Chicago, the mayor of Atlanta, the mayor of Kansas City, and there were some other cities represented on it. We had talked about what the federal government, the intervention, if you will, by the federal government into some of these protests. And what was basically said universally on that call is, for that segment of the federal government, it wasn't welcome in those cities because there was no formal request for it. It did come up on that call, however, where the federal government is assisting in getting dangerous people off the street, not associated with protests, but associated with violence happening in different cities. Example, that's Chicago. And those are more coordinated efforts where the U.S. Attorney's Office will oftentimes coordinate with the police departments on efforts of trying to get guns and drugs off the street. But that's not the case. I can't speak to what you heard. I don't think anything's true here. I have not heard anything to the contrary. I'll look into it.
Can you talk a little bit about, have you had further conversation with Bay State Cruises after the cease and desist order, and who's to enforce that what happened before does not happen again?
Yeah. This is about Bay State Cruises and who's to enforce it. I mean, the city doesn't have jurisdiction necessarily on the harbor, but I know I read today the company and their response. As I mentioned in the very beginning of this press conference, or right at the beginning of the press conference, gatherings like that are extremely dangerous right now. I certainly understand businesses wanting to open. I certainly understand businesses wanting to be successful, and we want them to be successful. But putting hundreds of people on a boat, putting hundreds of people in a park, putting hundreds of people on sides of a street lining watching a parade is extremely dangerous right now. As I mentioned earlier, for 4 consecutive days, we've had 1,000 Americans die due to COVID-19. We've had our own challenges. Over 7,000 Bostonians have died due to COVID-19. And our numbers right now are trending in the right direction. We have concerns about opening schools. We have concerns about opening colleges. We have concerns about opening restaurants. But it really is incumbent upon businesses and individuals to not put yourself in a dangerous situation. And if you put yourself in a dangerous situation, this virus kills. And I've heard the stories, well, it doesn't kill young people, but young people have died of the virus. It doesn't kill children, but young children have died of the virus. It only kills older people. Older, healthy people have died of the virus. This virus kills. And what we need to do right now, if you just look around the country, we don't want to be one of these other cities and other states. And we've had our own struggles in the last 5 months where we had to shut everything down, people out of work, people kind of physical distancing, social isolating in your own apartment. It's difficult. It wears on your brain. And if we don't want to return back to that, we need to continue to be very vigilant in protecting ourselves and protecting our families. That cruise going out in the harbor that night was not well thought out. And I would ask the cruise line to don't do it again. Because what you're doing is, not only you're putting your company in harm's way, you're putting the people that go on the ship in harm's way by putting them in a confined space where you really can't physically distance in the right way. So I would suggest that you be very careful. Just like I'd suggest to anyone, including myself, if you're going to be having a cookout or something, make sure the people that are there are people you know, and keep that distance. It's really important that right now is important for us that we stay very vigilant in keeping our numbers down. As we think we're winding down on COVID-19, but we're not. If we're in a sporting event, we're probably at halftime right now with COVID-19, which means we have another 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, 9 months to go. So we still have to be very careful.
Last question.
Everyone, thank you. We'll follow up on that vehicle.